guys, so today I actually participated in my second Jungle Cup of the month, and just like I told you guys after the first one, I of course will do a recap of this one as well. And I definitely not impressed with myself yet again. It seems to be a pretty big trend to just, for whatever stupid reason, to just not really improve. So really quickly, I do want to actually go over my team that I ended up using and to kind of take some focus off of all of the stuff down there. This is what we're gonna go with, and these were actually basically the 9 Pokemon that I really considered for this tournament. So starting off with Vigoroth, I mean, you know, it's Vigoroth. I mean, what can you do? Really, I mean, what more can I say about Vigoroth? Knocked Out, of course, coming off of the last tournament, I definitely was a lot more confident in throwing Knocked Out into quite a few different situations. The biggest counter that I had up against Knocked Out today was definitely Lantern. Although it was awkward to see that no one was running Charge Beam that I can remember off the top of my head. But Charge Beam would have definitely been the one that I went with if I had a fast TM, but you know, is what it is. So Knocked Out definitely a big contender there. Lantern, of course, I had to run the Water Gun as I didn't have any other TMs or anything like that to switch off of that, so kind of unfortunate, but it still did pretty good for what I got to use it for. Then we have Beedrill. Definitely wanted to have Beedrill here, definitely wanted to have Poison Jab. I know I was kind of conflicted on trying to do what is it, Sludge Bomb or whatever. So I was kind of conflicted on that because I didn't really know how big of a threat Wigglytuff was, and I'm kind of glad that I didn't, because I only ended up running into one today. So it was actually pretty nice that I didn't have to waste any resources on that. Ivysaur, you know, my favorite little plant here that could Vine Whip, Sludge Bomb, Power Whip, just pretty standard stuff on Ivysaur. I don't have Frenzy Plant Venusaur, so that's pretty much why that's there. And then the latest addition to the team was Wigglytuff. Literally powered it up before I got started in the tournament. Like, I was walking into the shop when that happened, and it left me with a whopping 17,000 dust, which is pretty sad. But I mean, this is basically the only Wigglytuff that I had. It's not optimized for PvP at all, as you can see. So I kind of just went with what I had. Of course, it does have Charm, Ice Beam, Play Rough. I'm pretty sure I didn't have to spend any TMs on it, which was kind of the main deal anyways. But I definitely had to spend pretty much the last of my my dust that I had, which is pretty unfortunate. So that kind of sucks. So I did consider Masquerain before I powered up the Wigglytuff. I was considering Masquerain quite a bit because I felt like I needed something else in the team besides Fortress, because I ran Fortress last week and I wasn't really feeling it as much. I don't have both moves unlocked for it, a couple of other things. I just really didn't feel like I had a good grip on how I should be using it up against the current state of the meta. Masquerain was a definite consideration, with Infestation being a really fast move there, getting us to Silverwind and Omnison really fast. I could probably spit out quite a few charge moves and be a pretty good shield buster, but ultimately decided to go with Wigglytuff instead. Fortress, like I talked about, Rock Tomb was probably the best possible move that I could have on it, but even then I just didn't, I don't know, I just didn't feel really confident with it. And then last but not least, I had Venomoth, and I was really wanting to use Venomoth so bad because I wanted a confusion user, because I was trying to think ahead of the meta that it would be nice to have something that does actually pretty good up against the poison types, because Wigglytuff is so strong. I wanted something to help counter that, and being that I knew people would be running more poison types, I wanted to be that step ahead of them even further and run something that had confusion on it so that I could kind of take out all the poison types that they had. But I'm glad I didn't go with that strat, because I think I was thinking too far ahead. I didn't run into too many people that had enough poisons, I think, to really warrant running a non-legacy Venomoth. If it was Poison Fang, possibly it could have been a little bit better, but unfortunately, it wasn't hitting on a whole lot. So that is actually the end of the road for my team considerations. So ultimately deciding on Vigoroth, Knocked Out, Lantern, Beedrill, Ivysaur, and Wigglytuff. So let's go ahead and jump into round one here. So in round one, we go up against Dr. Neuron. 177 and running a pretty standard team here. One thing that I actually went back into my Discord a little bit before the last round, I believe, and I was just kind of like taken back by how much I was seeing the exact same Pokemon, and unfortunately that really does kind of just, I don't know, it just aggravates me that that's basically all I got to see today. Literally first 2 rounds, if I'm not mistaken, we're running the exact same team. So it was just kind of frustrating to be playing up against the exact same thing over and over and over. And I don't know, it got stale really fast. And if you guys remember, I mentioned that the Rainbow Cup was probably the one cup so far that I've not felt very stagnant in. I felt like there were a lot of options, even though they narrowed down the options to less than 100 Pokemon even available to choose from. It was still a lot more widespread for some reason. At least that's how it felt to me. It probably wasn't, but for some reason it felt that way. So starting off here, going with a Lantern switch in on the Noctowl there. She switches into Venusaur. Kind of I kind of sacrificed the Lantern, unfortunately. It wasn't intentional, so it kind of sucked that I had to lose Lantern that early, because now I don't really have anything to go up against her own Noctowl. So, of course, she has the Lantern, and this was kind of like the main team that basically happened all day. It was Venusaur's, Lanterns, and, you know, just probably Vigoroth, something in that third slot that was just kind of like dependent on my team, which was really underwhelming, like I said. But here, I mean, I'm basically just battling uphill completely. If I'm not mistaken, I got a really bad lead, and it kind of was a theme. Round 1 was very interesting, so trying to spit out any kind of damage that I could. Literally not able to get off anything there, and of course, actually, she's running Charge Beam. Thank you, the one person out there running Charge Beam. I really, really like it. Even though it has abysmal damage, it does get you to those charge moves just a tad bit faster, so definitely cool to see there. So going into round 2 here, I know that she's pretty fond of the Venusaur, and the Lantern did perform really well for her, so I kind of figured that those two were going to be coming in. But honestly, like, looking up against her team, I couldn't really figure out a way into her team. Like, I couldn't really find a sweet spot of weakness for her. So leading with Noctowl here, and she actually leads with Noctowl again this go around. And here it's just basically a battle of who wants to lose their Noctowl first. And I don't quite remember. Pretty sure I don't try to lose my Noctowl, because I really do want to. I knew that she was pretty fond of the Venusaur, so I wanted to have something to actually help take out the Venusaur. She immediately switches into her Lantern. Of course, she still has a switch, if I'm not mistaken. She hasn't switched so far. She's kind of going to take a little bit of damage here, and we're basically just going to try to output as much damage as we can up against this Lantern. Ivysaur actually did get a lot of play today, which I'm pretty excited for. I always love using Ivysaur. He's just one of my favorites, so kind of nice to see there. Taking out the Lantern, feeling pretty good here, and spouting off the Sludge Bomb right before we're gonna actually faint out on Ivysaur. And I think I actually get to this next Sludge Bomb, which was very, very close to dying. But one of the things that she's been doing is kind of farming up some energy here. So I knew Noctowl was the best option to go with up against the Venusaur. I know that the grass types can be used to actually take out Vigoroth, so I definitely didn't want to switch in for Vigoroth there. So take the game 2 off of her for one game, I guess, there. So going into game 3, I'm kind of trying to figure out like what hole there still is in her team. I mean, the Fortress is kind of an awkward one there, because there's not really anything that I can do super effective up against it. It's all neutral damage. And as you can see, what I decided to go with here is actually a pretty interesting team, because it ends up putting me at a disadvantage in just a quick second here. So again, both leading with Noctowl here. Really, really common lead. I'm just trying to farm up enough energy to try to get as close to 2 sky attacks off back to back as I can. Try to imply a ton of shield pressure, and I get her to use 1 shield, and I want to say I let knocked out. Nope, I saved knocked out here. And we can see we're basically just going at it and trying to get to that freaking sky attack, but I couldn't hit it and let that go down. And then right there, I'm like, well, I don't have anything that's going to be able to resist a ton of this damage, so I'm just going to have to throw something out that's super effective. She does have the fortress in this last match, and trying to output any kind of damage. I know the poison is just going to be really, or the bug type move is just going to be really bad, so I'm trying to go with anything that I can to output as much damage as possible. Trying to farm up a little bit of energy, like I said, to try to fire off 2 charge moves back to back there, hoping that I can do something here. And got just enough to get another sky attack, or an aerial ace off, sorry, not sky attack. And pretty much going toe-to-toe with the fortress, but I ended up letting Beedrill die out here, and that was interesting, but I was really hoping to save a shield for Ivysaur, but I mean, at this point I didn't even have any shields left, so it was just kind of a done deal, especially once she pulled out Venusaur there. Because all she had to do was get to her first Sludge Bomb. I was tapping Sludge Bomb right there. I had it, but I just couldn't get it. So call it over tap or whatever you want to call it. It was pretty sad. So lost out in round 1. Very good opponent, Dr. Neuron. Very thoughtful in the way that she picked her teams. Her team of 3. So very cool. Now let's actually move on to round 2. So into round 2 here, as you can see, running the exact same team is Kilgo123, and coming off of round 1 where I basically already played this team, I was kind of like, okay, no real like clear way to get into this team, so just kind of gonna hope that I get some decent leads here. Up until this point, I hadn't really found a sweet spot to use Wigglytuff in. I feel like I probably could have used it a little bit more. The biggest problem was that Fortress could have had Heavy Slam, and then Beedrill and Venusaur could have had Poison type moves. So I was kind of worried that 3 of her Pokemon in round 1 could do pretty good damage to it, and here in round 2 as well. Kilgo's team definitely could have done some decent damage up against it as well. So I wasn't really keen on bringing it in this early. I did actually get to use it a little bit in the later rounds, which was actually really nice. So going into round 2, game 1, starting with our knocked out here, he actually leads Venusaur, so I actually have the good lead here. He does a couple of hits and then immediately goes into Lantern, which is the expected knocked out counter there. I totally was not hitting Sky Attack at all right there. I was actually hitting the switch button, and for some reason it registered that charge move. I have no idea why. So just trying to farm up some energy here for Ivysaur to get off some power whips kind of back to back, hoping to pressure some shields. Like you saw, I got 1 of those shields there, and he lets the Lantern go down. So just kind of putting as much pressure as I can. I knew that Vigoroth here wouldn't have been super bad. I had a little bit of energy stored up, but I decided to let it go there. And out of these 2 Pokemon, I was really tempted to like figure out which one was actually better in that like short little 12 seconds. I was like trying to calculate which one of these is the better counter. Noctowl does okay. It does resist a little bit of the damage, but definitely not as much as I would like. So as you can see, Vigoroth is just pounding away at this Noctowl, doing some really good damage, and barely end up staying alive there, and actually end up having the Sky Attack, pushing that last Sky Attack out there before Noctowl goes down. Unfortunately, he did have the shield, and I'm just completely stoned at this point. I have nothing up against the Venusaur with my Lantern, so pretty much a done deal for game 1. So, as you can imagine at this point, I'm pretty aggravated, I guess. Like, I'm not the type of person that really like gets upset or anything, so there's just kind of a monotonous type feel to this cup already. Round 1 and round 2 having the exact same teams, and I mean, it was just kind of bleh at this point. So still trying to figure out what combination of 3 really works best here. He does lead with Fortress, which that's really interesting. It ends up showing that he's not like destined to pick one lead every time. Here, I kind of set up the train of thought for him though. I did lead with Knocked Out in round 2 yet again. As you can see, he switched into Vigoroth, kind of throwing on the body slams there. I switch out, and I feel like, I mean, Beedrill was an okay switch there. I possibly could have went with Vigoroth, but I knew because he had at least some energy charged up, it was going to be kind of awkward for me to just jump into that match. And after the last tournament where it was Vigoroth versus Vigoroth and the whole piggybacking and charge move priority thing happened, I was kind of like not really feeling that. So I ended up like choosing Beedrill here. It ends up working out pretty well. I take out the Vigoroth and do some decent damage up against the Lantern. Of course, Knocked Out is going to be the worst of those two choices, so definitely going with Vigoroth as the Pokemon to hopefully try to take out the Lantern here, doing some sweet body slams. It's always nice to have such a quick Pokemon to be able to spout out tons of body slams. So basically what I'm doing here is just trying to charge up enough energy to have a couple of body slams back to back, and I end up taking that heavy slam, hoping that it wasn't Earthquake, because Earthquake would have had enough damage output to completely take me there. And as you can see, we end up bringing Knocked out to finish off the fortress, to basically just get rid of our energy that we had stored up there, and just come out and spout out the body slam, hoping to do enough damage and just actually taking it there with the most tiniest sliver of health left on Vigoroth. So very, very, very close there. So that means that we're 1-1 at this point going into game 3 of round 2. I still, at this point, haven't really figured out a clean way to get in. I knew, because I set up this train of thought where I lead with Knocked Out both times, I knew that because he wasn't dead set on leading with one Pokemon, he was probably going to end up leading with a Knocked Out counter, meaning Lantern in this scenario. So I kind of tried to set up that train of thought for him, and he ended up knocking those down clean for me, because as you can see, he ends up leading with Lantern there. I end up leading with the Ivysaur, and I try to charge up enough energy here just to kind of have something as soon as I pop back out. I know that Ivysaur is basically my my one counter to the Lantern, so I kind of have to protect him a little bit. I know that he can also take out the Vigoroth given the right shield scenarios, so I'm trying to kind of hold on to him, but for whatever reason, I feel like I should have just like held on to it for the Lantern. But as you can see, I tried to save his life at the tiniest sliver of health and ended up getting him out of there. Switching into Wigglytuff here and kind of just letting Charm do its work. As you can see, he did switch out of his Vigoroth into his Lantern. This charge move, like little mini game, is the best one hands down in the entire game. I love the little fairy just drawing a circle. It's so cool. Like when you draw the circle and the animation like pops out, it's so cool. So Lantern goes down at the sacrifice of my Wigglytuff, but that's a-okay. I definitely want to keep Knocked Out healthy here, so I decide to waste my last shield because he doesn't have any shields left, and it ends up being that he brought Venusaur in, which is a-okay matchup for me. So going off with that Sky Attack there ends up winning round 2. So very, very interesting. Like I said, round 1's team being the same as round 2's team was a huge demotivator for me, because I was like, oh my god, this is what I'm going to deal with all day. So it was actually nice to pull out that win. So let's actually move on into round 3. So round 3 is probably the most interesting team I saw all day. Plusle, Linoon, Fortress, Alolan Raticate, Vigoroth, and Beedrill. Whoa, that is like so crazy. This was the highlight of my day just because it was so different. It was so unique. I loved it. But going up against this team, I noticed right away that he's kind of got some interesting weaknesses here. Being that he has a Alolan Raticate, he does have a weakness to the Wigglytuff, which definitely means that I kind of want to bring that in. The only thing that I'm kind of worried about is Fortress having Heavy Slam and Beedrill having any kind of poison attacks. But that's kind of it, so I definitely have a better chance of using Wigglytuff here. And you'll kind of see that I make a really dumb decision, but it ends up working out really well for me. So he actually leads with Linoon. I knew that Vigoroth was actually going to be one of my best lead options here because he didn't actually have a direct Vigoroth counter. I mean, he had Beedrill, which was a nice like check for it, but I felt like one Beedrill versus like 5 other Pokemon that don't really have an answer to Vigoroth, is going to be a-okay. Plus, he had the Alolan Raticate, which was going to be like just perfect for me if I ended up leading with that and he had a Alolan Raticate. That would have been fine with me. So as you can see right here, for some reason I switched out Vigoroth and I just immediately went to Wigglytuff thinking, oh okay, Beedrill, I'll take out Beedrill with Wigglytuff. Luckily though, as you can kind of tell through the animation, it's actually running a bug type fast move, and the only fast move that I saw him use was X-Scissor, so I'm not even sure if it had a poison type move even in the charge move area. Either way, it actually worked out pretty well for me. So he switched in Plusle. That was his only answer to Knockdown on his team, if I'm not mistaken, which Wigglytuff made no sparing match for their kind of a really one-sided match that way. Wigglytuff ended up doing a lot more work in that round than I thought that it would. So definitely feeling pretty strong about this team. Looking through what he's got again, I'm kind of thinking, do I need to switch anything up? Ivysaur I didn't feel like was actually doing a whole lot, and plus I feel like he only had Plusle for the Knockdown, so I felt pretty safe with Knockdown, and then boom, he leads with freaking Plusle. I'm like, what? So ends up going with that, and if I'm not mistaken, actually I think Linoone had Thunder, now that I think about it. But either way, end up switching into Wigglytuff here, doing some decent damage. You can see Vigoroth is actually just pounding away at that freaking fat Wigglytuff. And he ends up shielding the Play Rough, which is okay. Unfortunately, that's pretty much the only charge move that the Wigglytuff is going to be able to get. So I'm trying to switch, and for some reason it just doesn't want me to, so it's whatever. Pull out the Vigoroth and ended up getting enough to get a Body Slam off right as he pulls out the Beedrill. Beedrill definitely the optimal choice to go with there, but I had the Knockdown kind of in the back, waiting for the Beedrill to come out. And as you can see, he does have X-Scissor there, which is a-okay with me. I mean, it's not going to do hardly any damage up against Noctowl. And I throw out the Sky Attack, and he perfectly switches into the Plusle. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So definitely a really good switch on his part. Ends up coming in. I block that, of course, knowing that that's going to be a really integral part to taking out this Beedrill, because the Vigoroth that I have is just going to not be able to cut it, nor the Wigglytuff. I can't even remember which one was still alive at this point. So round 3, the most interesting team of the day and my favorite match of the day because it was so unique. But a win there, so I'm 2-1 at this point. And let's see what happens in round 4. So in round 4, we go up against T3 Dragoon, which is... He was on a really good streak today, and he's using a really interesting team, which I like. He's got the Executor, he's got Wigglytuff. I mean, definitely a more unique team than what we've seen so far today. So I was sitting here thinking for quite a minute. I was like, how in the world am I going to get around this Executor? And for whatever reason, it never occurred to me to just use Beedrill. Because while I was sitting there thinking about it, I was like, I'm like 99% sure he's going to have Confusion. Why else would you be running Executor in this cup? What does he have? Seed Bomb? There's no sense in running Seed Bomb on Executor in a cup like this. So I was like, alright, it's got to be Confusion. So Beedrill is just like, I'm like, okay, I can't use Beedrill. But for some stupid reason, if I'd have used Beedrill, it'd have been fine. Because he didn't end up using Executor at all, I don't think. At least in what I saw. So I ended up going with Lantern, Knockdown, and I can't remember what I had in the middle. He leaves with Wigglytuff. And the entire time that I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, alright, there's no sense that he's going to run Wigglytuff up front. There's no point in it because I've got this counter, I've got that, I've got this and that. And Wigglytuff just seems like an awkward lead for him. So I'm thinking he's either going to lead with something like Noctowl or Venusaur, and I just tried to guess between the two which one he was going to end up running, and he totally threw me a wrench there by just going Wigglytuff. So unfortunately he does switch into Fortress, and you know, Ivysaur's got nothing for Fortress there. So basically just gonna hope that I can do anything up against this Fortress there. It's just going to be taking a ton of neutral damage. It's basically a wall to quite a few things. And I actually wasn't sure there if he was going to have the second charge move. I have seen Heavy Slam up against the Ivysaur, but I wasn't 100% sure if he was going to have the Rock Tomb, and I was like, oh, should I shield it? And I decided not to, hoping that he didn't have Rock Tomb, but he ended up having it, so I took more damage than I was expecting to. But you can see there that Wigglytuff just cleaned up both of the last two Pokemon that I had there. So back to the drawing board, thinking quite hard about this again, and this would have been the matchup to definitely bring Beedrill in, because Beedrill would have done some decent work here, but unfortunately I was just completely against that in my own mind. I don't know why. I was just like, nope. So here I decide to try to mirror his tactic. If he's going to lead with Wigglytuff, I can at least counter it and we'll go even if I lead Wigglytuff, but either way, his team actually doesn't have too many counters to the Wigglytuff in Venusaur, and then I don't remember exactly what else was there, but I didn't think that he had enough counters to warrant me to not lead with it, so he ends up leading with Lantern, which was nice, and he immediately switches out to Vigoroth here, which I thought was quite interesting. So he ends up going into Vigoroth, and I decide to take one Body Slam and pretty much just try to spout out the fastest charge move that I possibly can, get off this Ice Beam there. He ends up shielding it, and I end up actually shielding this, thinking that possibly my charm damage would be able to output enough, but it was like one charm away. I think, like, based on his health, I think it would have been like one charm away. So end up going with Ivysaur here. This was a really bad play. I should have just left Ivysaur in and not switched into Noctowl, because that forces me to basically forfeit my Noctowl here. I knew as soon as I switched, I was like, I should have just held it, because even then I could have possibly have went toe-to-toe with Venusaur, but I mean, basically both ways that I had it, he had an answer to me. So whether I would have stayed with Venusaur and just barely beaten Venusaur, Lantern would have came in and just kind of cleaned up with the Ivysaur there. So I mean, you can see I did actually end up cleaning up with his Lantern, but unfortunately my Sludge Bomb, he had a shield for it, and I just didn't have an answer to it. So I kind of got stuck here. All he needs is one charge move, and he gets to his Sludge Bomb super fast, so end up dying out in round 4 to end up losing in round 4 altogether. So after everything's said and done, I go 2-2, and after tiebreaker and all that stuff, I actually got pushed down really low. I was actually like in line to be second after round 3, and then everything that happened in round 4, like the people that needed to win in round 4 definitely did, and definitely ended up having a situation where it pushed me really far down. So I think in total I ended up like 5th after tiebreakers. So it was interesting, but kind of frustrating. I just don't feel like I'm improving. I don't know. Like, honestly, I know that I need to practice more. I know that I need to take the time to practice, but I just can't find the time to practice. Like, I'm always working on something. There's always something going on with me. So it's hard to, like, find the time to practice, and I really do think that's holding me back. And if I can figure out a way to actually practice more, I think I would do a little bit better in the cups, but until that happens, I'm kind of stuck middle of the road every month. So yeah, so that's actually going to be it for the Jungle Cup, guys. Actually, the Jungle Cup is set to finish this week. On Thursday, we will actually have our first available Mirror Cup. I don't know, it'll be interesting. Hopefully, with the tournaments that we're going to do in the server, hopefully by the end of August, we can start doing ranked tournaments in there. It'll be a little bit easier to kind of coordinate with you guys, like, directly in the Discord server than it will be for me to have to, like, travel around to these different cities. I'd still like to do the smaller tournaments like I did my first Jungle Cup, just because, I don't know, I almost feel like invested in that community now. Like, I really do want to kind of harness those people and, you know, try to show them that PvP can be really fun, and that's really what I want to do there. So I do have a lot of interest in that, but other than that, I kind of just want to do online tournaments and you know, do more coordination with you guys rather than, you know, people I guess in my actual community. But either way, I don't know, we'll see what happens. So that is actually gonna be it for today, guys. I'll go ahead and show the clip where T3 Dragoon actually ends up winning.
Our Mirror Cup will be announced this week, probably like tomorrow. We'll put a
I actually walk all the way across the store and set up my little like area with my tripod and my camera, and the guy walks across the store to where I was just at and announces it over there, and I was like, oh. So I didn't actually get like, hey, you won, handshake kind of thing, but I did, you know, film them sitting there talking and stuff. So I will definitely pay some respects to the winner. Congratulations T3 Dragoon for taking the cup today. He didn't have a single loss, if I'm not mistaken, and he did really, really well. So congrats on that, and yeah, we'll see what happens next month. So that is actually going to be it for today, guys. I'll go ahead and roll those ending credits for you. Thank you guys so much for watching. Always remember that if you like to like videos, you could do that, but if you don't, you could be that guy. Otherwise, let me know what you have to say down in the comments below about the video. I do highly appreciate you guys watching. If you guys want to support me in any way, there are several links down in the description for Patreon, joining the community here on YouTube, or even just directly PayPal if that's your thing. I greatly appreciate everyone's name that's on screen, as you guys have showed some sort of support outside of just viewing the videos, and I thank you guys. You don't understand from the bottom of my heart. So until our next video, guys, I will catch you then.